Hello and welcome back. So in our last video we have painted this side, the right side, with a brush, and it turned out pretty well. Off camera I've just done a little bit of touch-ups to clean up the mess. In general, this is how it turned out. You can see it turned out pretty well. Let me take it close to actually show you what it can look like when you're painting. It is obvious that this is a hand-painted model. I mean, it's not precise. You can still see some brush strokes depending on the paint that you're applying and how well you thin it out, but you can see that on the body itself it's really great. It's nice and smooth, but you can still see some brush strokes on the camouflage patterns here and here. And it's really different because this is more of a shinier, like semi-gloss coating, and this is a really matte coating, and it has a little contrast. Now the way to mitigate that is of course by using some sort of lacquer, and we'll do this at the very end of the painting process on both sides. This lacquers basically give you a protection, a layer of protection on the model, but also it unifies the sheen of your end product. So now it's time to airbrush paint the rest. For this purpose I have chosen these 4 paints: yellow, green, blue, and gray green for the camouflage. They're not one-to-one match. You'll see that they differ slightly in tone, but they're close enough so that when we apply it, it's going to look somewhat presentable. Also, you notice that we haven't attached the propeller nor the back horizontal stabilizers. We need to paint them separately. That's the way you do it. And as of course the landing gear as well, and the nose cap here. And we will be using the same paint, this one, camouflage green, for the bottom section of the wheel well here. So when airbrushing, there's a couple of more steps involved, and you do need a couple of more other items. We'll talk about them now. A must-have if you are airbrushing is masking tape. Masking tape is really important if you want to get good results. It can be really tedious and daunting sometimes, but the end result is worth it. Masking tapes come in different shapes and sizes, but these are the 3 main ones you might find in your local hobby shop, and they're from Tamiya. These are really good, but AK also has one, Revell has one, and I think that even MIG has one. I'm not really sure, but you get the idea. These masking tapes can be bought from different manufacturers, and these are not the same masking tapes as you can have for your wall painting. Those masking tapes don't work very well. Either they're too sticky or they're not sticky enough. These masking tapes are awesome because you can reuse them time and time again for a long time. Really, they're really durable, and what's more important about these masking tapes is that they have a uniform coating of glue on the bottom, so when you are applying them to the model, they won't let paint seep inside. What happens more often than not with cheaper masking tapes is you put them on the model, you secure them down with your thumb, and when you're starting to paint, they kind of give way and let paint seep through, and then you have crazy marks left, and then there's a whole lot of crying and cursing involved, and you don't want to do that. So just get yourself proper masking tapes. I happen to have these Tamiya tapes, which are fantastic. I will stand by them 100%. I love them, and I have them in this refill boxes, which you can buy with the tape, and then you can just open the box up and just buy the tape itself and replace it, and they are fantastic. Next item that you might want to have, and it's pretty cheap to obtain, you can buy these already made, or you can just buy yourself some crocodile clips and some basically grill sticks. These are for grill, for kebab, for to attach meat on. And you can buy these, attach them on, glue them in place, and then you have some crocodile clips. These are really handy, like you've seen before, for attaching certain items that you're going to be painting afterwards. And they hold them in place. You can spray them without messing up your hands. So these are kind of a must-have. Paint thinner and airbrush cleaner also a must-have. It doesn't really matter which ones you go for. I happen to have these. They work fantastic and I recommend them. Mixing cups. Either have some sort of an empty bottle for paint mixture or mixing cups. They'll make your life much easier. Don't mix paint inside the paint cup of the airbrush. That can have some negative consequences. If you mix the paint inside the paint cup and you pour the paint in first and then thinners, what happens is paint seeps inside here in this chamber and into the nozzle, and before you start mixing it, it starts setting. And when you press down on the trigger to release the air, and clogs up the nozzle and sometimes just go plop. It spits out a nasty spray of paint. Or it can not even spray out paint, just clog it up and you have to pour the paint out, clean the nozzle and do it all over again. So if you're gonna mix the paint in here, it's best to put thinner first and paint afterwards. And in any case, do a test spray before actually going onto the model, because you need to know if the paint is spraying well. So try not to mix paints inside in the cup. Try to mix them in these cups and then pour the mixture inside, and you'll have less trouble this way. Trust me. Okay, so let's proceed painting. Just like before, I've already scuffed the surface with the 3000 grit sandpaper, and I've cleaned the surface off with alcohol before shooting. And now we need to protect the paint before painting. So for that, we'll need some masking tape. The majority of the bottom surface and on the side, of course, is gonna be painted with this blue. So what we actually need to protect is the clear parts, this yellow portion, and the camouflage above. On the bottom, we need to protect the tail, which is already painted, and half of these. Okay, so I masked off the first portion of the aircraft. I had to protect the canopy, the upper camouflage. It doesn't have to be protected here because we're going to be covering over. Again, we're going to be layering paint, and this is much lighter than all the rest of the paints. I'll just paint it whatever, and we'll paint the wheel wells after the fact. So now we have to mix the paint. To prepare the paint for painting, I mixed it thoroughly, then added 5 drops of paint into the cup, added dilutants in about the same amount. I mixed it thoroughly, and after I was happy with the consistency, which was like milk, I added it into the cup and test sprayed it on a piece of paper to see how well it flows. Always test spray before going onto the model. Once I was happy with the flow, I proceeded to paint. And if by any chance you are actually wondering why I'm not showing you the actual footage, the slow down 1:1 speed, well, I can. And this is how it actually is in real life. As you can hear, the rattling of the compressor and the hissing of the airbrush. Enjoy. Note to myself that during this painting process, having rubber gloves on is pretty much a must. However, I ran out of rubber gloves and, well, I had to clean my hands afterwards. So let's just speed up this process, shall we? This is our first layer of paint. I've applied it with an airbrush, as you saw, and it went on pretty smoothly. As you can see, it covered the model really nicely, and you can already see and tell that this is a little bit darker than this. Like I've told you, it's not an exact match, but it doesn't matter for this tutorial. But you can also get the idea of how your model can vary in color and tone depending on what type of paint you're using. So this dries really quickly. It's already dry to the touch, and it can be painted over now. That is why we are going to be painting yellow on the nose here, right? So we will have to remove the masking film. We'll leave this on because we don't want to spray paint inside. Now we have to actually protect this whole wing section on the bottom, and it's really important that it don't get any paint on. Okay, masking is now finally complete. I cannot stress enough how important it is to mask off what you don't want to paint very well, because overspray is gonna be your worst enemy when handling or with an airbrush. It will cause you all kinds of sorrows and pains. So do a proper masking job and it's gonna be fine. Now it's time to mix up the paint. Alright, the airbrush application of paint has been a real success on nose. As you can see really closely, the application with an airbrush is much smoother and finer than with a brush, which is, understandable since this is a spray and not a brush that doesn't leave any brush strokes. And actually, this yellow really matches well with the other yellow that we've used nicely, so that is a good thing. And in retrospect, if you're building this model, you might omit gluing this part in after the fact. So you're painting the whole body and then gluing in the turbo, because it's really hard to get paint on it with an airbrush because you have to go in a crazy angle to spray it. But anyway, I think it's pretty good. We've covered the majority of the aircraft with masking tape, so it's not going to be a bother. Now we just need to wait until this sets a little bit, and we'll proceed with painting of the wing with the green. Alright, so we've painted up this model, and you can see that this is much richer green than the one on the other side. And again, the paint accuracy right now doesn't really matter. I just show you how to do it. And now we have to transfer this camouflage pattern onto the wing. And we will do this exactly like before, using our trusty ruler and soft pencil. Just like in the hand painting tutorial video, I have marked off the edges of the camouflage by using a soft lead pencil. Then I applied masking tape near the lead pencil line, leaving it exposed so that I will cover it with this layer of paint because it's darker and it's not going to show through. Okie dokie, so we have actually painted all the camouflage patterns that we needed, and we're basically done. The only thing left is, of course, the canopy, which I will have to individually mask all the windows and then proceed to paint it with green. But that we will do at a later date. Now we'll just reveal our fruits of labor. We'll start out with the back tail, and this is the most satisfying part of painting, peeling off. Look at that. Beautiful. Yeah, now we have to address this. We have to put green and then the camouflage gray. So let me mask this off and come back. So how do you mask off the canopy? Well, there are several techniques for this, but the one that you probably are going to go for is this. So you take a piece of masking film, just cut little segments straight, and maybe go even halfway. Just make sure they're straight. Once you have these strips, take a little ruler and cut off the heads. Now they should be fine. Take your tweezers, pointy ones, and place them on the windows and just kind of try them out where they go. This is the most fiddly job ever. Sometimes, due to the small scale of the aircraft and the boxy shape of the canopy, it is necessary to make even smaller masking tape pieces, and I always go for small triangles because you can always fit smaller pieces of triangle and make them fit to the uneven shape of the canopy, like here on the corner, rather than using squares or rectangles. I must stress that how important it is to do a proper masking job, especially on a canopy, because it's going to be really visible to everyone because it's such a exposed piece on top of the aircraft. If you're not comfortable with masking like this, then you can opt for hand painting the canopy, and for that you can check out the hand painting tutorial that I've made when I painted the first half of the aircraft. There are many ways to mask out the canopy, and one that is the most easiest to do, and I've done this several times in the past, where I would cover the entire canopy with masking film, trace out the outlines of the windows, and then proceed cutting them with a sharp knife around the edges. Now that works, but you need to have a very sharp knife and have to be really gentle, because then you can really cut into the soft acrylic plastic, and that shows once you peel off the masking tape. So that is not really advisable. The other thing that I would like to discourage you from doing is to use liquid mask on its own for covering the windows. Liquid mask should always be used with masking tape, where you use the masking tape to outline the edges of the window and then fill in the void with liquid mask. If you just use liquid mask to mask off the windows, what happens is that when the paint dries and you proceed to remove the mask from the windows, it tears up the paint from the frame of the window, and then you need to touch up the frames, or in worst case, have to paint it all over again. Alright, so we're done with the masking. This is pretty laborious and tedious job, but it needs to be done in order to get a good result. And this is basically where your finesse and skill come into play. As you can see, I've patched up the windows using smaller pieces of masking tape by cutting them off into little squares and little triangles, and then they kind of mix and match to get the shape that I want. Now, because I'm painting just a half of this aircraft, what I can do is to protect our freshly painted wings. So now it's time to paint. So this is painted. Now we have to mark off the camouflage pattern, match it with the other side, and proceed to paint with this, the last paint, and we're gonna be done. The airbrush paint process is now done, and now we can finally remove all the masking tape. Here we go. Absolutely gorgeous. There is a little bit of a spillage here and there, but we can tidy this up using our favorite tool, the toothpick. So let me just quickly do this. Just gonna tidy it up a little bit. The paint still hasn't dried completely, that's why I can do this. If the paint had dried to its full, this wouldn't be very possible. Well, actually, the last thing to do is to paint inside here. See, it's the same paint as the bottom aircraft. We'll take some masking film, put it over the hole, and then we'll see the outline of the hole. Now, this is the tricky part. This is how I do it. There's probably better ways of doing this, but you have to have a very sharp knife or blade, and you just kind of cut into it and go to the very edge, and then just follow the lines and kind of do a little cutting motion up and down. But this will do. And of course we have to protect the yellows. Okay, so now we have finished painting for the real now, and we have to move the masking tape off. Right, here we go. That's basically fantastic. We've covered really well. We have protected the paint on above from overspray, and this is basically done. We've also painted the landing gear, and I painted the landing gear pushing it onto the floor of the mat because I didn't want to get spray on this side. otherwise I have to mask this way. But it turned out fantastic. I'm really pleased with it. All we have to do now, or actually I have to do now, is to touch up a couple of things with brush, and then we will proceed with the next part. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye bye for now.